6:41 on February 26th. I want to first start by asking the commissioners here to introduce themselves. We have a special guest today, Auditor Megan Kilgore. And so, for Auditor, I think you know me. I'm Chris Moses, and we've worked together. Olivia.
Good morning, Olivia Johnson. I'm in the Human Resource Department at AEP.
Angie Blevins, commission member, former city clerk.
All right. So today's agenda is a presentation from Auditor Kilgore, and in attendance is Darlene Wilds and Eugene Borders on behalf of the auditor as well. And then we'll conclude with a presentation from Greg Beaverson on the survey responses we've received to this point, and then continuing the conversations for the further weeks. So I would like to hand it off to Auditor Kilgore for her presentation. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members. Just so I'm clear, is Ms. Womack, Ms. Kathleen Turner joining online?
Commissioner Womack will be attending. She's in security.
Great. Would you like to start with revenues, just to be clear on kind of just a revenue update?
Yes.
Anything, Chair, that would be really helpful for us to hit on as we provide our remarks?
I think an overview of really the operation from your lens as the auditor. What does the auditor take in, revenues, expenditures, that sort of thing?
Yeah.
What role you play specifically with our unique form of government?
Great. Well, hi. Hello. Nice to see you.
Hello, good morning.
Mr. Erickson. Grab a seat. Yeah. Matt, you're not staying? Okay.
Good morning.
Nice to see you. Have a good day. No problem. No problem. Get settled. I anticipate the folks outside in the hall will probably be going into council chambers here soon.
Yes.
It is our hope.
But it's nice to be here. What I'll do is I'll start with an overview of really just the city's revenue and give you a little just kind of perspective of its composition, its makeup, and then more importantly, I think for your consideration, you know, how maybe we're looking at the next few years and what we're considering. I made some notes, but the more important thing is we're here to try and inform you as best we can. So ask any questions. Between Darlene and Eugene, we hope to be able to answer everything. And if we cannot today, we'll certainly get you anything. So I want to start with really just kind of the most important framing, and that is, how is the city funded? Our revenue structure is going to be easier if I visually show you the document that Darlene's going to show you, the one that looks like this. As you can see, Columbus is a bit unique. If you just draw your eyes to the chart at the bottom, that visually shows you the representation of our primary sources of revenue that fund our general fund. You can see overwhelmingly that color in orange. About 3/4 of our revenue comes from one single source, and that's our municipal income tax. As you all know, we're one of the rare cities across the United States who really have a majority of our revenues coming from income tax. And everything else, while really important to us, is relatively de minimis in comparison. So property tax represents a much smaller portion of the general fund. Intergovernmental revenue, or the revenue we get from like the state, also modest, and that revenue is largely outside of our control. And then charges for services and other sources fill in the remainder. But what that means really, you know, for every one of you who understands the role that personnel plays and understanding really the quality and the composition of jobs, it means that what we're focused on is wage, job growth, how our jobs are best positioning us for the future, and what that'll mean for our revenue landscape. I like to talk about, though, just in context, because that materiality is so important, really our income tax performance with a little bit of history. In 2025, income tax grew at a pretty incredible 6.49%. Our estimate, which is one of our core duties, we set the city's official revenue estimate. That estimate, for those of you outside of government, that's one of our charter duties, and it sets the ceiling for the city's budget. That's one of the key pieces of our separation of checks and balances here. My office is separately elected, as is, of course, the mayor and the city attorney, but we're the executive branch here at the city. And when we set that revenue estimate, it independently says this is what we think revenues are going to be, our charter role, and the budget has to not exceed that by even a penny. So we set a revenue estimate last year, assumption of 6%. It came in at 6.49, which is a strong result, one of the strongest in the city's history. But it's really important for me to share a little bit of context with you, because I think one of the things you're doing is trying to anticipate the ranges that'll help you set compensation for the future. Since 2000, income tax growth above 6% has only occurred 4 times. And a few of you have been around long enough to remember some of those. But for 3 of those times, they reflected anomalies. And to unpack that a little bit, in 2010 and 11, we were above 6% because that is the last time we went to our voters and we asked them for an income tax increase. And because of the timing of when those monies came in, it affected 2 years. If you actually look at the second piece of paper that we shared, you can see these anomalies kind of present themselves. But the 2010, 2011, very high revenue production. We also had the federal stimulus period of 2021. And so occasionally in our history, when we have like a macroeconomic surge, a lot of federal stimulus coming into our borders, i.e. money's coming from outside, you'll see revenue growth that's also anomalous. The only other year is really that 2006 period, and that is, I would say, a really rare, which is why 2025 was an exceptional testament to our revenue strength here. But it's important to share revenue growth of that level is not, in my opinion, something that I would suggest to the committee as sustainable. So if we step back and really look at long-term performance, income tax growth in Columbus has generally averaged closer to about the 3% range over time, with stronger years, of course, happening during expansion. An example of that is when like a new healthcare tower opens up at one of our major centers of employment, or if there's an American Electric Power expansion, and certainly it'll be softer during years of economic downturns. As an office, we really do not look at much before 2019. And the reason being is because as a city, we look so differently. Our skyline, our hospital systems, the names in our major economic centers, they just look differently. So just to give you kind of a snapshot of 2019 through present, really how much we have grown. And when I say grow, it's not just population. You pay income tax where you work. And so we benefit from all of the people who are driving in from Newark or Powell or Marysville into Columbus to work every day. But this speaks to how much we've grown in terms of, I'll call it more scale or complexity. Since 2019, our income tax collections have increased by about $283 million. That is roughly 30% over that pre-pandemic baseline. That cumulative growth is significant. And so in other words, while recent performance has absolutely been strong, in light of a much more complex SWOT analysis, a SWOT analysis that I'll speak to and kind of unpack, I do not believe that, if I can suggest to the committee to consider that ongoing strength will be continued. It's been a minute since we've had an economic downturn. It's been a minute since we've really seen significant declines, because when I say cumulative, I mean the last few years, we keep building. We keep building. The fact that we have positive growth of 6.5% on the last few years, we are in an enviable position as a city. Our income tax is disproportionately influenced by higher wage employment. So our income tax is not a direct reflection of how everyday households feel. post-pandemic growth here in Columbus has been so, I would say, directly influenced by expansion in healthcare systems, life sciences, research-intensive roles tied to the ecosystem of education here, technology, software, even while some of our financial, professional services, insurance companies have experienced maybe employment changes as a result of offshoring or AI or even automation, they've also grown other jobs that are arguably higher wage paying. Healthcare in particular, the last few years, has been our stabilizing kind of ballast. It is not highly cyclical, it's very stable, and it absolutely supports steady wage growth. So this K-shaped kind of economy that you're very familiar with, that's what we're really focused on in our office. Higher wage sectors continue to experience typically strong earnings growth, while the lower wage sectors have seen, frankly, very uneven outcomes. And so this is really an important distinction for a government like Columbus. Our income tax performance reflects the aggregate success of corporate net profits, corporate profits, wage strength. It does not necessarily reflect uniform strength or uniform growth across the entire labor market. So in other words, we say in our office a lot, we can absolutely quantify the quality of a job here, which really leads me to the last kind of set of remarks on revenue, looking forward. And when Kristen first, reached out and asked for some projections in the 2030 and 2033 range, it's important, I guess, to caveat if 2025 taught us anything, it's how quickly revenue assumptions can be quickly tested by things way outside of our control. Geopolitical shifts, tariffs, immigration, and its effect on workforce, state tax debates, things that are happening at our state legislature that you all are very familiar with, and even federal shutdowns that can quickly take away the data that we rely upon. And I know you each in your respective roles understand this, but even forecasting 2 years out has become so much more challenging than when I first came into office. And so projecting 4 to 7 years out, it's a bit more daunting. So we find a lot of comfort in what I'll call ranges. Getting comfortable with kind of an optimistic, a baseline, more meaning realistic, and then a pessimistic scenario. And even yesterday I was speaking at an event at the New York Stock Exchange, and the topic of anti-fragility. How do we bake in slack as a really important aspect of a city's financial governance? How do we build in a little bit of slack to protect ourselves for things outside of our control? And so, when we're asked like what our wages will be in future years, what we can responsibly provide are expectations grounded in these different levers. So wage growth, inside and outside of city limits, evolving mix of industries. How will AI affect our jobs? How much more healthcare and research expansion can come into our borders? Remote work patterns, potential state policy decisions. And so doing my best to also, work through a lot of additional things that I did not mention with Darlene. If we assume for your purposes some of those levers and keeping a kind of a realistic, a slightly conservative but realistic model, and assuming that there's continued stability with respect to our healthcare systems and the primary employers that we know today, considering moderate wage growth in professional services, considering that there will be no structural tax policy changes that will materially affect our city, and at least one, I'll call it normal economic cycle. Normal's not a bad thing. Normal is getting back to our normal. Then I think a defensible planning assumption for your purposes would be to consider an average general fund or primarily an income tax kind of growth rate in the range of about 2.5% to 3.5% over the medium term, so turning out about 3%. For what it's worth, that might sound, single digits, low digits, but for us, what that would reflect reasonably could be 10 to 15% more than current levels by 2030. And by 2033, that could be, of course, 18 to 25% more than where we are today. So, just as I kind of conclude, I think what I want to offer just maybe one broader observation that may be helpful to really the committee I recognize that a lot of your work is tied to data points. You want to kind of round yourself there. But I would also just offer that, while I think revenues and the anticipation of revenue levels should be considered, I would say as you consider the future compensation structure that'll transcend, a lot of us here, that salary adjustments are not just, of course, fiscally responsible, but really aligned to, the top line kind of levels of revenue growth are not really a good proxy. Instead, it's really the scale, the complexity, how many more moving pieces are required to manage them. And so I just ask that you do consider that in addition to those high-level revenue numbers. I'm happy to take any questions at all.
Questions by the commission? Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, Monica Womack, with Native of Columbus, and I run MLW Solutions LLC.
It's nice to see you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Chair, it's a really good, I think that you had a really good prompt about kind of today. And one of the things that I want to do a really good job of conveying is that, a lot of people ask, well, what are revenues doing? And the question I try and turn around, and you probably have this at AEP, is really, the real question is what is required to responsibly manage them? And the SWOT analysis in my time, it's been really, it used to be like an upward, let's say an optimistic, a baseline, and a pessimistic scenario where this tight COVID elongated those. But today, it's even broader because of all of the federal actions, the state actions, and so forth. So it's really important for me to work in those ranges for comfort.
I have a question. Oh, do you have one?
Go ahead.
So I was going to ask, you presented us with a range of factors that influence revenue growth now and in the future, and the predictability challenges that go with that. I would be curious, as we look at other comparable data from other jurisdictions, what factors are you looking for, or what would you suggest we look at when making decisions based on this is more comparable to that? Are we looking at economic factors such as stable market-based growth, right? So you referenced healthcare. Are healthcare or banking-like sectors, are those more, because if that reflects kind of us as a city, are those more persuasive to look at as opposed to others? Or what other, I would say, thoughts do you have as we look at that data?
I'm really curious. I'll add something. I'm curious if you have any perspective on this too. I think I always start with looking at what does the government actually do. And so, for example, some cities oversee, they do not oversee utilities. Here at the City of Columbus, we have 4 major utilities, and we have a 5th enterprise, parking garages. We call it mobility here. And some governments oversee their own public school system. Their cities do, right? And so I always take a look at kind of like what is the best comp in terms of the composition of that government, because that'll dictate what types of revenues are flowing into it. And from there, I would say, the materiality of our singular revenue source is quite abnormal. There are a number of different ways that I could visually show you this. The best would be a Brookings article that called us, one of the most vulnerable to the elasticity of economic shocks during the time of COVID. When people were not able to work, the theory was people would not be producing wages and our income tax base would really slow down. What they failed to consider in that analysis was the composition of our employment. Healthcare kept working, and a lot of our jobs were able to pivot just remotely. And so when we do comps, it's more about the size of the cities. How many folks do they serve? When rating agencies do comps, it'll be comparing us to cities over 900,000 in population and utility systems with populations of users over 1.2. And so right now, our reach, I think a denominator that gets us into trouble sometimes is that folks like to use just the city's population as the denominator, but really considering that folks drive in every single day from all over our state to work, and that our reach of public utilities goes into 38 separate municipalities in this entire region, including the economic supercenters of Dublin and New Albany and Westerville and Anderles area and Pickaway County. We operate much more like a metro form of government in many respects. And so I'd urge you to consider that comp. But would you add anything else to that?
Just that a lot of cities are more volatile than we are. You know, usually the coastal kind of cities experience more volatility in hiring and employment and all those kinds of things. So when you're comparing us to, you know, California or, you know, East Coast cities, that's a lot different. And then I would say dependence on water. I mean, we have great water supplies here. There are cities throughout the country that struggle with that, and you know, they may see big shifts in employment because there's no water available for the things they want to do.
It's a very good point. Yesterday, some pretty big news hit the financial markets in that the city of Chicago was downgraded. And it went into a triple B, which is not a good place. You're going at getting down towards what they call junked, and it was a really tough day for the city of Chicago, but a lot of that had to do with how much their city has had exposure to federal, I will call it executive overreach. And so that's something that I think is also going to be nuanced in a lot of the way that you look, is how much has shifted in just the last year as a result of maybe material funding changes coming from places like federal government.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Chris really hit on the question I was going to ask about the anomaly of going from income and using the income taxes and what some of the other municipalities use. I don't know if we have a breakdown of that yet. But also just to your point, probably more of a comment than a question. We were just in a conversation with our operating companies, and so Central Ohio or areas surrounding Central Ohio, all these new developments that we're seeing, sometimes developments go in places and then they can't even provide electricity and generation to those places. So I think that goes into this as well.
You know, yesterday I was on the phone for a bit with the folks who help us, Ohio EPA, fund our clean drinking water programs and our infrastructure for sanitary sewer. And it was really quite interesting because a lot of development, I never in my career in doing this, even a few years ago, probably 5 years ago, I did not have investor conversations where the first thing they asked was, what is your water capacity? And I'll give you a very important example. Anderle, there's a Drive Capital, who's obviously a big venture capital firm. They bring a lot of investments to our region. They have a short online that we play now during our bondholder, our investor, our rating presentations, because factually, our city's capital plan for utilities has grown. It's quadrupled in just about 5 years' time. And we say capital planning by current year plus 5 years. And a lot of the rating agencies trying to get ahead of that, I've tried to explain, well, it results in additional economic growth. It's not just cost out. We have a net impact, of course. But this video I actually play because one of the heads there at Drive actually says, you know, the title of the video is, why would Anderle choose Columbus, Ohio, choose Central Ohio? And one of the things they say is water and power. And that's not something that I saw in videos 5 years ago. It was workforce, it was hip, it was talent, it was, you know, all of the accoutrement to an incredible city, for a thriving, you know, capital city. But today, when water is at the top of that list and access to electricity, Darlene, I think your point is spot on.
Where we're seeing data centers. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. I'd be delighted to kind of move into a little bit of like just the role of the office, but yeah, is that fair?
Any other questions on revenue before we go into duties?
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
I guess it's important to acknowledge, and I think Eugene can also maybe attest to this, but, you know, when you speak of governmental roles, they're complex. One size does not fit all. My partner, who I would say is the person I am obviously closest to, I do not know if for $1 million, she could adequately explain what I do on a daily basis, right? And so when this request first came, I was, you know, maybe we do a little PowerPoint, should we do, you know, something? So what I did is I just wrote down some bullet points that I want to just express in plain language. I want to just humanize kind of the office. And then I would like the committee's direction for how could we make sure we put this in your paper of record. Maybe it's a memo we produce for you, but Eugene, I think, will help maybe listen for what the committee needs and as our representative to this, and then we can put it in a memo or whatever you'd like, whatever you'd like. So certainly, you know, I think you all know that the title of auditor it's an antiquated misnomer to the role and the responsibility of this office. But it means something differently in every single place that I go. Some auditors are, you know, just tax collectors. Some do not collect tax. Some are more like inspector generals. Some are more like controllers. And in many places across the county, the country, auditors are appointed. Financial officers are appointed. We are a bit rare in that our charter and our authors of our charter prescribed the role of financial independence. And in setting up the executive branch, I think one of the most successful things that we are so fortunate to have is, number one, a charter that so clearly sets forth a powerful executive branch that is made up of separation of powers, of checks and balances. And certainly in light of, you know, some of the things that we've seen federally, I take a lot of pride in that and comfort. It is absolutely acknowledged by rating agencies too, in the strength of that. When you look at the city's financial performance and you look at its decision-making across, 60, 70 years, you can see where those beautiful checks and balances have become really important. And there's a lot of comfort in that from outside advisors. So when you ask, when the committee kind of, looks and you ask for us to kind of talk through roles, I know you will do a good job of looking at scope and the roles and the duties and not just those titles. But we want to be helpful to you. We don't want to leave you with that, frankly, kind of a very cloudy work of sleuthing all that out. So I thought today I'm just going to do some high-level explanation of what we do on a daily basis. So in Columbus, the auditor's office really administers the robust business of government. I say that a lot, like we are just we do the business of a gargantuan city. Functionally, largely speaking, this role really does operate as, and you'll see this with the top 15 largest cities, the role of like a CFO. From a technical perspective, to walk you through some of our roles, of course, the charter prescribes that we have and maintain the city's official financial record. We also, as I shared, we perform the city's official revenue estimate, which is a very important function of the city. But the work that goes into that is a lot of really, really advanced revenue analytics. I would put it on par with the analytics that is performed even at our, I would say Fortune 500 easily, absolutely easily. With respect to every single dollar that comes and goes inside the city, we perform all of the accounting and financial operation functions. To do that, we have to maintain a robust system of technology. We use a global Microsoft product, but with that comes all of the technical requirements of the individuals to lead that. We perform all of with respect to like our almost 10,000 employees, the payroll functions. There's also a very large technology system that assists with that. But I would say in each one of you in the city side who knows how much complexity has happened, it's not just performing, the payroll functions. It's, as our former human resources director can attest, it's in keeping up on all labor negotiations, labor relations, ensuring the most importantly, the accuracy of all of that. And of course, when things like more complex federal policy changes like the One Big Beautiful Bill comes along, we have to make all the interpretations and really make sure that we're carrying out executing those changes within payroll. From a financial reporting standpoint, it's easier if I just visually show you. This is a huge point of pride. Every single one of the accounting steps that go throughout the year is visually displayed in this gargantuan 300 and roughly 80-page book. And this is one of the reasons why we're able to maintain our gold standard on Wall Street, why investors around the country really do keep an eye on, or applaud our transparency. That document is a culmination of year-round work. And it's also a representation of our audit, our annual audit, which is overseen by managed by our office. The city's ability and kind of our financial performance machine, this is done, believe it or not, in 90 days, which is the fastest large city of our size. Last year, we were the third fastest city in the entire country to get our audit out. But as you know, what that means is it's confidence, it's investor comfort. It's transparency. And we say a lot, we can't really improve upon the depth of our disclosure, but we can upon the way that we communicate it. So what I'm not showing you today is a robust system of dashboards and a lot of visualization features that we have that are constantly available to the public. Transparency portals, we have revenue dashboards, lots and lots of frequently asked questions from investors and bondholders that are constantly churning. The division of revenue, which is a very large part of our office and certainly very important to the city's ability to carry out its business, we collect, manage, enforce, audit, and perform all of the technological functions necessary to collect income tax. We also do, of course, business and net profits taxes, emissions tax. We have hotel motel taxes and short-term rentals for those folks who have Airbnbs and so forth. What that means, though, is thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of accounts. It also means a gargantuan technology system, a technology system that has incredible levels of cybersecurity protection, compliance, and a personal point of pride. And we have really grown our system so much that we are now in lockstep with the Internal Revenue Service, which is a huge benefit for us. On the debt management side, we oversee, the issuance of the city's debt, which is basically anytime the city needs to go out and do a new water project or a new road or a sidewalk, we issue that debt after council approves it and the mayor proposes. We handle on a daily basis the payment functions for all of the principal and interest payments that go out, and they do go out daily. That also means we have a big technology system there because that needs to orchestrate the payments to our bondholders, whomever owns the city's bonds. We perform all of the investor relations to both our potential bondholders as well as our existing bondholders. And so just a visualization, we do a lot of reports to our bondholders. It's necessary, it's customary, gets them very comfortable with kind of just what our capital issuance looks like. And in addition to, of course, the investor relations, very, very important are our relationships with the rating agencies. These are not static, one time a year. These are dynamic. They're always asking questions. They're any time, for example, and Danius will remember when early Doge was occurring, rating agencies, investors calling, what does that mean to you? How at risk are you? And so our ability is really, as the auditor's office, we try and communicate to their best interest to answer any question they have so that our perception in the market remains as high as possible, that no one fills in the gaps with unnecessary pessimism if we can show them that we have our arms around it and we're in control. So with respect to things like that, I brought you just a visual. This is a ratings presentation. This is the depth of how much goes into a ratings presentation. Now, it's important that that work is shared. We have members of the mayor's office, We have members of different departments and divisions who are, like Director Atha, who is spending a lot of that money, the bonds that we're issuing. We have members of council, especially the finance chair, participate. But we have to orchestrate this dynamic stream of communication, really year-round. And so, I've shared with you a lot of more of the kind of the technical facts, but maybe to illustrate just the scale, the size, and maybe to also humanize this a little bit. The reason why I make comparisons to really the Fortune 1000 level operations is because we manage the multi-billion-dollar debt portfolio. We manage revenue systems that not only bring in billions of dollars, but serve really as a customer conduit for our residents, our workers, our business owners. We oversee a multi-billion-dollar investment portfolio. And then we also are responsible for the financial and Wall Street markets credibility of one of the largest cities in America. We are the highest rated city of our size in the United States. We are the largest city in America to maintain AAA ratings from Standard & Poor's, from Moody's, and from Fitch. And what that simply means is, when in any of us, we each have a personal kind of credit score, of course. If any of us go out to get a mortgage, the higher our credit score, the lower the mortgage cost, which means if we have a lower score, we're going to get a better interest rate and we're going to afford more house. And so the real financial benefit to the city is by maintaining such high credit ratings, we borrow at the lowest cost possible, which allows us to do so many more projects than if we had a lower credit rating. But that work, when I share that, I want to kind of humanize this now and how this really requires precision. It's because the financial benefits to all of those decisions and operations really are immense. In our capital program, we work in a basis point, which is a 0.01. It may not sound like much, but every time in the market that we go out and we're able to improve our position with any bond across 20 years, every 0.01 movement that we make creates savings for us. The basis point equals $300,000 in savings, and we're able to get more investors, lower our interest rates, improve our position in the market. That very quickly, every time we go into market, equals millions of dollars of savings. And that's the human part, because that means salaries, that means more rec and parks investments, more public safety. So we really do, I love to put that human spin on, because that's what it's about. As you know, we've really spent a lot of time modernizing. My predecessor was a lot of things, a legend of legacy of public finance, but he wasn't one for modernization. And so we've really done a lot, as you all know. And what that means is that our personnel needs have also grown more specialized. We can do a beautiful word cloud and just illustrate how much that modernization has grown. And so one of the stats that I thought I might offer today that I'm really proud of is that of electronic filing for taxes. It sounds relatively simple, but when I came into office, believe it or not, everything was on paper. Some of you might remember seeing the gobs and gobs and gobs of mail trucks pushing those envelopes around. But today, electronic filing is 70%. I'm really proud of that, but what that means is, in business sense, and this is the business of government, in tax, we've been able to reduce our tax processing cycle time. So from when we first open a document to the final close of whether that it's a refund or a payment, the cycle times for just individual returns have gone from 14 days to 2 days. And on those corporate net profits taxes for like AEP or one of our big corporations, those are huge, huge, huge files, 50 days to 12 days. And so what that means is that revenue, those tax payments come in faster. We get them down into our investment portfolio faster. We're starting to earn interest on it. But it also means we need, arguably, we have a lot fewer human-made errors. We're not rekeying that information in. And it really does help inform us on the data side, too, as to how our economy is performing. We're also doing some things with advanced auditing using, I would put us in the 0.2% nationally with advanced revenue analytics and tax auditing using advanced intelligence with the intent of seeking to close the tax gap. And the tax gap defined by those who should be paying their taxes but are not for whatever reason. That's a program that I dreamt of about 7 years ago, and it's now live, and it's incredible. But what that simply means is, and I don't like to put on this term, but that means more revenue for the city. We're closing the tax gap. But if you take a step back from the title of auditor and look purely at scale, the office, you know, it's billions of dollars of debt, investments, hundreds of thousands of accounts, it's billions of dollars of transactions, investors, credit relations. And this is why I really suggest the role of the office looks more closely resembles that of a Fortune 1000 CFO, because we are really managing financial risk at scale. And that is something, you know, as I kind of conclude my remarks, I really do believe deeply in this process, and I love that it is years in the future, because it's important to take oneself really out of this. This transcends any of us, and this will be setting the future of this, you know, for years and years and years to come beyond 2033. And so something that I think is really important to the city is that when thinking about compensation parity, I'm a big advocate for parity between the role of auditor and attorney. And to share with you a little bit maybe my background there, both offices were determined by our charter and prior charter committees to necessitate separate election. Both manage citywide risk, both require extremely highly credentialed employees. And in our office, for example, we employ CPAs, attorneys, professionals with required advanced degrees, a whole alphabet of specializations and acronyms that are required for one to hold the job that they have. Many of our staff also, and this will be, you know, continue on, also serve on national committees that shape decisions, policy decisions across the entire country. The city attorney, in my opinion, manages the city's legal risk. We manage a lot of that financial risk. And both offices are very foundational to the structural integrity of the city. As Emeritus Clerk Blevins knows, I love history, and I think it's worth just remembering, you know, why our offices exist in their current form. It's because of Washington Gladden, Washington, who has the Social Justice Park just here on East Broad Street at Cleveland. He was a nationally known social justice reformer. He was known as for social justice well before those words were ever put together. But he spoke so beautifully of the importance of separation of powers for the betterment of democracy in our municipal government. And he is the individual responsible for the independence of a financial arm in our office. The structure that he wrote, and if you haven't read some of his journal entries on this, please do. It's beautiful, but he talks about the intentionality of that structure because he believed that financial stewardship should be independent, professionally led, and directly accountable to the public. And so in essence, he created the expectation that the office be strong and substantive because of the duties that he prescribed to it. And to that, you know, Columbus is going to continue becoming more large in scale, large and important economically. Its sophistication was going to continue, but germane to that is making sure that the office is set up foundationally to be able to hold future office holders who have the experience necessary to wield its responsibility. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, excuse me, very much for that overview. I have a couple that kind of jump to mind. So your role now, you mentioned sort of the evolution from your predecessor. I'm curious to get your thoughts as to how you see this role in 2030, 2032, 3, all that. Will the evolution continue? What do you foresee being some of the biggest challenges expansions or contractions of the office right now?
I think the office is going to continue in the complexity of its operations. The way that, you know, pretty much every trend, you know, every piece of the way that the office was administered prior to 2019 no longer plays true today. Every trend has pretty much gone out the window because the city looks so differently. The size, the scale, if we look at just high-level numbers, like numbers of revenue or, you know, numbers of taxpayers, it's just a surface-level data point. The composition, the complexity, the enormity of how we manage to communicate all of the different ingredients to our SWOT analysis is going to be ever more important. And I think one of the things that, the reason why I care so deeply about, you know, in the future, it really being, you know, held by individuals with immense expertise, is because the size of the operations are no different than that of any of our companies in our headlines, our skylines today. What else would you add there?
I would just add, you know, the implementation of these large systems that we have, they're always evolving. You know, there's cybersecurity risk all the time, and these systems have to stay up to date. And it's a pretty large effort to keep on track with those. His legacy systems, we let go for years. We had them in place for 40 years without, you know, updates every year or those kinds of things. But these require constant updates, constant review, because there are bad actors who are, you know, trying to break them, quite frankly, and they just become more complex. So having the kind of professionals in place and managing those professionals to keep those systems up to date is a really significant task.
It's a really good point. And if you think about like the tax gap, it is the role, it is the business of government to try and remove that gap, and to try and you know, with respect to, let's just say, like local business owners, individuals who are moving here from out of state who may be confused by the complexity of income tax in Ohio. These are not the individuals that we are going after. We're going after the folks who are absolutely knowingly curtailing, you know. And when you look at that and you consider that is our responsibility, it should absolutely be the duty of future auditors to ensure that they have professionals in place who have the technological capability. We're one of, I think, only 17 municipalities in the entire country whose sophistication is large enough that we actually have systems in lockstep with the IRS. That is a gargantuan economic boon for us, because if someone is, for example, filing their federal taxes, claiming their, you know, work here, but not filing locally, if we were simply looking at paper, that might take us a few years to track that down. But today, if you're filing federally and you're not filing locally, we're going to see that in our system. And so, and I kind of offer the business of government, it's hard not to speak about the economic benefit of this office, but if we can move every single day and get more investors interested, lower our cost of borrowing, keep credit profiles, that equates to financial savings, and absolutely, I think, necessitates investment in both personnel and systems. Would you add anything else, sir?
No, I think Darlene hit it.
Sort of as a follow-up, who else would, you mention Fortune 500, Fortune 1000?
Yeah.
Who else sort of in the public sphere, like, do you look to as a peer or somebody that, you know, is doing it right?
Yeah.
Or, I mean,
Great question.
amongst your peers?
So I'll give you an example. Next Tuesday, Wednesday, I'm a part of the Milkins Institute's Finance Forum. And one of the cool offshoots of COVID is that CFOs, we banded together because information sharing was really helpful. And even as recently as, you know, DOGE or anything else that we've gone through with tariffs, Danny and his team, for example, asked me, we would love to know if there's a way for us to identify the surcharges that were added to our invoices as a city related to these tariffs. And so we are trying to figure out, well, how do we do that as a system here best? And so I can quickly ping my other colleagues, the top 15 largest cities, and get some insight. You're all thinking about it. We're all got kind of this boat together. So to answer like your question, I would say Washington DC is a pretty strong comp in terms of duties and role, as is the New York City comptroller. And that includes things like revenue outlook, advanced revenue analytics, economics. It really depends on kind of the question, the role, the duty that you're looking at is who I would say is like the most appropriate comparison. But I think anyone, just because of the size and the scale of top 15 largest cities, looking at them operationally is the only place that I would suggest going. I would not look anywhere in the state of Ohio. I would just look top 15 largest. And that would be, just to be very fair, I would say the same for city attorney and their role as well, and the mayor. Just functionally, the operations, the scale, the size, the people, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And the name of the position may not be the same.
100%,
for sure.
yeah.
It's gonna be different, but.
Nashville, CFO, San Diego, their responsibilities are split amongst, like I would call it more general fund side and then separately utility side. And so while looking at, to your point, this top 15 cities, a lot of times the roles are bifurcated or trifurcated because of just what and how their governments are set up. But as you get into that, if you want to circle back, I'm delighted to assist. Yeah. Let me ask a direct question if I can, if it's helpful. I gave you just a really kind of high level, and I hopefully kind of humanize some of the, it's so technical when you just read on paper. You read in the charter and it's like, oh gosh, even that makes me sleepy. But if we can be helpful and maybe put something together for like a memo, just let us know. Okay.
Oh,
You have a voucher.
okay.
I was just curious, based on your role and the visibility that you have nationwide, what makes Columbus more potentially challenging to lead from any of those elected offices roles? Would you
Yeah.
consider, how might we, maybe the better question is, how might we be uniquely positioned?
Oh, that's such a beautiful question. It's so funny because even as recently as yesterday, there's a perception of Rust Belt still. And to overcome that perception, and you probably get this too in some of your even hiring, you're hiring someone from the coast and saying, no, we are, depending upon the day, 14th, 15th largest city, right? This is a big deal. We're a gargantuan, and we are the GDP. We are the GDP of this Midwest. When you look at population growth between 2010 and 2020, we were the only city in the Midwest to grow by more than 100,000 persons. And so I feel like that has transcended where we do not have to do as much communicating or convincing because of how much we have grown in economic prominence. But when you're at the top, you are the highest rated city in America. Anytime there's an economic change like tariff policy or immigration and workforce policy or a state legislature that is saying we might take away property tax, and to us, for what it's worth, is worth $92 million. Yeah, $92 million and $93 million, thereabouts, right? I looked at Darlene to make sure she's going to be precise. That is, while it's not our most material source of revenue, that's a lot of money. And our job is to try and communicate. It's a lovely question, Danius, but like when you're at the top, everyone wants to poke holes. Well, what might change that? And so I would say that's one of the reasons why our collective investor relations, the mayor's relationships, he's on the company side, making sure that corporations who are looking to move here are able to see the future in Central Ohio, that we are going to be the best place for them to put their roots and to bring their employees here and develop. Same with families moving here. So I think that's probably the hardest challenge. Yeah, it's a great question.
So the question I had is around, I know that you were speaking on like the caliber, the skill of the individuals that you are currently employing, and then also updating systems and not just those systems of process, but the systems of technology as well. Are you seeing any impacts from AI and the evolution of what AI is doing in the size scope of the team that you're currently leading and how that would look in, 4 to 8 years?
Yeah, and when did you first start, Greg, with the city?
2007.
Okay. When I first came into office, and this was 2018, there were 4 individuals who opened up envelopes, and that was their role. And that is a fantastic role to have. That was the business of our office at that time, and that was because we had so much paper coming in. And it's really important that those jobs have shifted. Those employees did not go away, but their duties have had to evolve. And part of that is at the end of the day, like looking at and saying like, no, this is, if you take office, and this would go for any of my colleagues from the mayor to the city attorney or anyone, you take office, an executive branch, like you are administrating, you're executing. You have a duty of carrying out the functions as strongly as you possibly can. And so we have absolutely had staffing changes. I would say when I first came in, to present, we are from a strategy, crawl, kind of, walk, run, fly. We're flying in a lot of respects. We're still, I would say walking in some areas, but we're flying in a lot. And because of that, in the advent of things like AI or any type of advanced intelligence, of course we have to, if it makes smart intelligence and it helps make us perform our functions and operations, we absolutely have to look at it. Also, just to give you a very simple example, thank goodness it came into play when it did, because when the SWOT analysis of revenue fallout happened in early 2025, and the rating agencies are knocking on our doors saying, what will happen if all of the federal funds that come to your borders, whether it's Nationwide Children's or Ohio State, or any of the jobs that are funded by federal monies, not to mention all of the direct monies that come to our city through federal grants, if those were to go away, what does that mean? What dollar amount does that mean? What were you going to do? And thank goodness AI came in when it did, because there is no Excel spreadsheet that can do that quickly. And we were able to create an incredibly modern and sophisticated form. And I think Danius is really familiar with some of the digital dashboards we did with her team. It spoke volumes, because it immediately to the world, to the nation, said, we've got our arms around this. Internally, it's kind of a hard conversation, because we actually have, and I believe we still do, fewer people in tax than when we came into office. Because as attrition has happened, a lot of those jobs that were very manual and paper-oriented, as individuals retired, as individuals shifted, they're no longer needed. Now, but what is needed are individuals who are more highly specialized to run the systems. And I would say another big transformational item has been the number of people who come and go, private sector, public sector. I would say before 2018, our office was much more public. Today, it's interchangeable. What else would you add?
I think the biggest switch is, where we focus our work. So I remember when Megan first took office, April 15th, all the forms that came in, we were actually over there, like, putting paper together, helping them to put all the paper together. And the boxes and boxes and boxes of paper and checks that would bring over to the treasurer's office, that is all gone. That does not happen anymore. And a form that somebody's, looking at holding is now automatically into our system. So we had to become, what we weren't doing was auditing. We were processing paper. We were pushing paper. So now we've kind of retooled all the positions over in income tax, and they're more auditing those tax returns than they are just simply processing the paper to get the money in the bank.
Going off of this, as you're forward thinking about skill, about focus of the role, you mentioned a couple times the parity, between city attorney and city auditor, and I kind of pulled out the the salary approvals from previous, and those have been the same. Do you think in the future those will continue to be the same? Maybe it's a best practice that I'm just not aware of.
Sure. You know, this came up in, I believe it was 2018, which is why I really referenced it. And what I do not assume is that, especially as incredible community stewards who are kind enough to give us your expertise, that everyone has the same working knowledge as, you know, kind of the chair from his work here, or anyone on the left-hand side. So I wanted to start out by giving you my kind of 2 cents about why that parity was so important. I think it isn't helpful for me to consider financial risk and legal risk. And as prior committees have maybe discussed, I think it's, just to be very frank, especially when other committee members have been attorneys, they've clearly understood that role, and they felt like they could really opine on why that role should be more salary-centric to what the general market is offering. And they struggle quite a bit with that of, like, an auditor. What does that person do? And so I wanted to frame that just so you heard it directly from me. The role of the auditor is going to continue to be extremely technical, precise, accurate, but whomever holds those offices in future years will bring about positive ROI to the city in the form of business operations, financial decisions, and carrying out the functions of the business of government.
Thank you.
Yeah. I think Greg can speak to some of the quandary of folks who ask about, again, my own partner could not describe what I do, and I'm okay with that, but if we really kind of get down into the weeds and you want more comps, just email us, we'd be happy to help.
Any final questions for the auditor? I'm saying hard stop here, so,
May I
Question.
ask just to
Yep.
confirm, a memo would be helpful, you mentioned the commissioner.
yeah.
What's that? I couldn't hear you, I'm sorry.
You had asked if a memo would be helpful, and I just
Oh,
wanted
yeah.
to confirm that that was the desire of the
Yep.
commission before we let you go, so.
I'll kind of type up
Coordinate.
some stuff, and then maybe Eugene, with your thoughtfulness too, you can help maybe make sure we're communicating it adequately. I really appreciate the time, and also just thank you for caring so much. This, you know, by us positioning for incredible people in the future and setting those expectations, we perpetuate the success of our city, and I deeply appreciate that. Thank you.
Feelings
Yeah.
mutual, thank you. And yeah, memo would be great,
You got it.
that'd be awesome, so thank you.
We're in the throes of audit right now. Can we have a couple weeks? Is that okay?
Yeah.
You sure? Okay.
Absolutely.
I'll follow up by email.
Sounds great. Chair, are we dismissed?
You are dismissed.
It's a public meeting, you can say as long as.
You can come, you can go.
Thank you, as the compliant, she's like, it's public still, but yeah, we will self-select.
Not sure I have that authority.
Nice to see you.
Compel.
Nice to see you all, take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, how are we doing, commissioners? Do we need a break? Are we good?
I'm good.
Good, good, we're good, okay. Then we'll move on. Okay. So I am going to hand it off to our compensation manager, Mr. Beaverson, to present an update on the survey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners. Nice to see everyone again. I have just one very simple slide. I believe there's also a handout.
There it is.
Is that right? It should look something like this. Okay, yeah. This, yes. Yes, next to
Yeah, okay.
Mine's a little bit, not much. Just an update on the survey. You might recall that we set a deadline for February 20th. Of course, that has come and gone. A reminder was sent just this week, and we did get several responses since then. So just as a reminder, 28 cities surveyed. We now have 16 responses, which is a 57% response rate. That is exceptional in terms of survey practice. 57% is a lot of surveyors would really love to see a 57% response rate. I can also tell you that the commission added Virginia Beach in the last meeting. And so I was able to locate my contact there and send the survey. But of course, it was if I had kept the same date, the deadline, then they would not have had as much time. So what you see up there is, I put in italics, it's an extended due date of March 6th. I have heard from Virginia Beach, and they are definitely going to provide their information. So we will have 17, at least by then, and I think that brings it up to a 60% response rate.
Quick question before you move on.
Yes, Commissioner.
For Seattle, Washington,
Yes.
we have a lot of X's in that. Every column is Xed.
Yes.
So were they responded or?
Oh, they were contacted,
Uh-huh.
they responded, and then we had put an X there for a reminder just for ourselves.
Got it.
And that was good because I got a response the same day that we sent out the reminder. And so
Oh, perfect.
sometimes that's all it takes. It is just kind of a little, hey, we don't want to bother you too much, but if you wouldn't mind, or if we can help answer any questions or anything like that. And as it turns out, my counterpart there was very, very close to finishing it, and I believe we got it later on that.
Oh,
that day.
perfect.
It was either Monday or Tuesday.
Oh, no, perfect.
So, yeah, and that was the case with a few others as well. Let's see, I do have just one. Oh, it's at the bottom of this page. I did want to, I looked back for the last commission in 2022. The last commission studied 26 cities. 8 cities just did not respond. Regardless of our attempts to ask them over again, and hey, can we help with anything? Is there any publicly available data that we can go out there and kind of take that burden away from you as much as we can? And we just never got any responses from 8 of those. But when you take those 8 away, the last commission still ended up with a 69% response rate. So again, with Virginia Beach, 60%, and if we're looking at that extended deadline of March 6th, I can see this commission benefiting from about that response rate as well. So that's actually great news. I did want to bring up though the fact that might be something that the commission might want to consider, just to think about or continue thinking about. Most likely we will be in the same position this year, that not all cities, regardless of how much we poke and ask and things, will respond. Is there a time, and I don't necessarily need an answer right now today, but is there a point there where it would be the best point to start the analysis of the data? The sooner we get started on that, the sooner that I can make the presentation available, the sooner you'll be able to see it and start receiving that data for you to make your considerations in doing the work of the commission.
I would say by next week,
Start next
By
week.
the
by the extended,
Yeah.
date.
Okay, so you're satisfied right now, at least with the response rate that we have
57%.
now?
I mean,
Yeah.
how do you all
Okay.
feel?
I think if we extend it, say we
Past
don't
this.
get anywhere, if we go to the, I don't know, 20th, like, we're gonna run out of time.
Yeah.
So, and there may be a couple that respond, but I'm not sure there's a whole lot of benefit to delaying. So I'm with you. I would say start it now, and if we get additional cities that come after the deadline, then we'll take them. We can take them, right?
We can take them, it would take a little additional time to come back and add them into, especially once it's already been analyzed, but we've done that before.
Okay.
So.
So as long as there's
when
no
is our-
prohibition there.
When's our next?
That's a point of discussion, I think, for,
Because we would be meeting on the 12th.
we can meet on the 12th, it's on all of the calendars. I'm
If-
trying to give you a week off, just if you want it, but we can certainly meet on the 12th to have that conversation.
Okay, I'm only asking if you were to wait by the 6th, would you be able to do your analysis by the next time we meet? If
I
not,
appreciate
I'm
that.
okay with starting the analysis now.
Oh, I see. I think initially we could have a very good overview by then, especially if we begin it now and then add other cities as they come in.
It'll give you time.
Next week. I think so, so. And if it's okay, if I let you know if we run into any kind of problems there that are slowing us down, but I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do that.
And you tell
By
me
the
if you don't
12th.
have time, if not, you can start it, but.
That's why I was hoping that you know, if we
Yeah.
do run into something, then if I could get back to you prior to the 12th and let you know. And I would do that as soon as possible, but right now, I don't think it would be a problem.
If I may jump in,
Sure.
Greg, this is your portion. It may be helpful for the commission to think about today or before our next meeting. What information do you want from these cities that isn't in the survey document and that isn't in the demographic information that was covered up front? I have today's conversation on my mind. Do you want to know what their revenue sources were and how would that inform your decision? Things like that may be helpful to think about now. Over the next 4 meetings, you're gonna be hearing from all of the elected offices, just like we did today. And so that may inspire more thoughts and that's totally fine, but Greg and I can support that research over time. We can always give a Google to another city as their responses come in. And so I'll just mention that now that in my mind as staff, there's no need to wait for those requests until you've heard all that there is to hear, especially given the timeline that we're on.
No, I think that would be a really great value add to make that informed decision as it relates to revenue, what that looks like. And then the last thing I wanted to ask is, I know that Auditor Kilgore referenced that based on comparison of size, that Ohio cities would not be included in that, but like New York and DC. I see DC is actually on their list, but they have a reminder outstanding as opposed to a response. And of the cities that didn't respond the last time, were they also included in that group who did not respond?
I could check and see and
Okay.
do an analysis of
Okay.
that.
I see a new city though. Is that
DC, I believe, the commission in 2018 did DC, but not
Okay.
2022.
Okay,
Okay, I got that backwards. But yes, I can certainly,
Okay.
check that out and cross-check.
just as it relates to that specific role, I know that it can become now sketchy to say, okay, well, then this role is comparable to this
Right.
demographic, and this
Right.
role is comparable, and so where
Yes.
that can create a slippery slope in looking at trying to see which one matches each and every single time, but I
It's-
think that there is an opportunity to be able to, if we can.
Right, and I'm glad you brought that up, Commissioner, because that is something that we can do. Especially with what the information that Auditor Kilgore presented, that you may find that some cities, especially based on this memo that she'll provide, some cities really more go toward matching what she and Darlene do.
Right.
Some will not.
Right.
I can tailor the analysis to limit it to those cities, instead of just doing the whole list that the commission provided. So however you would like to do that, I'm here to help you to ultimately make your decision. So if the data needs to be analyzed in a different way, an additional way, and presented subsequently, I'm here to help however I can. So please let me know.
And I think that would be helpful in looking at the roles independent and dependent of each other. So if we're looking at the auditor role, the attorney role, mayor, council president, council member, there are going to be nuances in those respective roles that are going to be unique based off of the actual communities that are being evaluated, based off the questions on the survey that show, this may be your full-time job, this may be your part-time job, this may be, I see here that the auditor can't do anything but maybe be a notary.
Or serve in the military.
Serve in the military, so
That's it.
so those are certain things that, but others, municipalities may allow other things in that space. And so looking at it from that narrowed view, but then as it relates to how they all interwork together, as she was sharing, as you pulled up, the attorney and the auditor are equally salaried. However, does it make sense for them to maintain the equal salary and what that looks like kind of across and how we're setting what it will look like in the next 4 years?
Certainly, understood. And that's all I had, Mr. Chairman, for the survey update, unless there were any additional questions.
I was just gonna go back to it doesn't look like we surveyed DC in 18, and then it doesn't look like they responded if we did survey them in 22, so, not sure we.
In 22, yeah, if they're not on that list.
They're not on
then
that
we-
list for respondents, so. Okay. Thank you. Greg, any questions before we move on? Sorry?
Nope.
Good, okay. I want to bring up, it's come to our attention that we do not have a records retention schedule for this commission. So it being necessary that we establish one to properly comply with our public records law. We don't have a schedule in place, so that informs us when records can be deleted. So until there is, we're gonna need to maintain these records indefinitely until such a schedule exists. So because this is gonna go on beyond our commission, we're going to need to appoint a staff member to manage said records on our behalf. So I would like to nominate Kirsten Stosse to manage our records retention schedule creation on behalf of the commission and the commissioners. I ask for a second.
I second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
All right.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
And then can I ask, is it already written somewhere that the report of this commission is filed with the city clerk?
Yes. In
That
the
should
charter.
always happen in
Yes.
addition, yes,
Yes.
thank you.
So Kirsten, you will,
Understood.
all right, you got it. Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Yeah. I'm sorry. So unless there's further conversation, discussion, I will move to conclude this meeting and adjourn. Thank you, everyone,
Thank you.
for your attendance.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.